The whispering woods stood silent, yet not quite. A faint rustling persisted. It was as if the trees were alive and speaking. The locals knew better than to venture deep within. They'd seen too much, heard too much, lost too much. Stories circulated in hushed tones of people who entered and never returned. The woods had a hunger, they said, a thirst for souls. It lured the unwary with its siren song, a song of whispers and promises, promises it never intended to keep. At the edge of town, a weathered sign stood. "Danger, do not enter," it proclaimed. But the paint was faded, the wood was rotting. It seemed the woods were claiming even this warning, slowly, patiently, as if it had all the time in the world. The path leading in was overgrown, nature reclaiming what was once tamed. But if you looked closely, you'd see fresh footprints in the mud. Someone had ignored the warnings, someone had entered recently. And the woods were waiting.
Alex stood at the forest's edge. His backpack was heavy, his heart was light. He'd heard the stories, the warnings, the pleas to stay away. But Alex was different. He was curious, brave, or perhaps just foolish.
The locals had begged him to reconsider. "The woods take," an old woman had said. Her eyes were distant, haunted. They never give back.
But Alex had laughed. He was a traveler, an explorer. He'd seen things they couldn't imagine. He adjusted his pack, checked his compass, took a deep breath. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of decay, and something else. Something he couldn't quite place. It smelled like anticipation, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. With a final glance back at the safety of the town, Alex stepped forward. The path seemed to open before him, welcoming him, embracing him. And as he ventured deeper, the world behind him faded. The whispering woods had claimed another soul.
The path twisted and turned. It seemed to have a mind of its own. Alex tried to keep track, north, south, east, west. But his compass spun wildly, as if even it was lost in this place. The trees loomed overhead, their branches reached out like grasping fingers. At first the whispers were faint, a gentle rustle of leaves, the soft sigh of wind. But as Alex pressed on, they grew, louder, clearer, more insistent.
He told himself it was just the wind, just his imagination. But deep down, he knew. This was something else entirely.
The light began to fade, but it wasn't night falling. The canopy above grew thicker, denser, as if the trees were conspiring, trying to block out the sun, to trap him in eternal twilight. Alex's steps faltered. For the first time, doubt crept in. He thought about turning back. But when he looked behind him, the path was gone, swallowed by undergrowth, as if it had never existed. There was only forward now, into the heart of the woods, into the growing chorus of whispers, into the unknown. The whispers became words, fragments at first, then full sentences. They called out names: Sarah, Michael, Emilia, people Alex had never met, never known. But the voices spoke with such longing, such desperation, as if these names held the key to their very existence.
Alex quickened his pace. His heart raced, sweat beaded on his brow. He told himself he wasn't afraid, but his body betrayed him. His hands shook, his breath came in short gasps. And still, the voices grew, louder, more insistent, more real.
Then he heard it, his own name. "Alex," the woods whispered. "Alex, we've been waiting." It was his mother's voice, but that was impossible. She had died years ago, yet here she was calling to him, beckoning him deeper into the woods, promising answers, promising reunion.
Alex broke into a run. Branches whipped at his face, roots reached up to trip him, but he didn't slow, couldn't slow. The voices were all around him now, a cacophony of pleas and promises, and at the center of it all, his name, over and over again: Alex, Alex, Alex.
He burst into a clearing, and there it stood. An ancient tree, massive, gnarled. Its trunk was wider than any tree Alex had ever seen. But it wasn't the size that made him gasp. It was the names, thousands of names, carved into every inch of bark.
Alex approached slowly. His hand reached out, trembling. He traced the letters of a name, Sarah. The wood was warm beneath his fingers, pulsing, as if with a heartbeat. He moved to another, Michael, then Amelia. The names from the whispers. They were all here.
His eyes scanned the trunk, searching, dreading. And then he found it, his own name, Alex, carved deep into the wood. The letters seemed to glow, to pulse with an inner light. He stumbled back. His mind reeled. How was this possible? When had this been carved? The whispers grew to a roar. The tree seemed to vibrate with their intensity.
Alex clapped his hands over his ears, but it didn't help. The voices were inside his head now, calling, pleading.
Join us, Alex. Come home. The ground beneath Alex's feet began to crumble. He tried to run, to escape, but it was too late. The earth opened up, swallowing him whole. He fell down, down, into darkness, into silence. The voices were gone, but somehow this was worse.
He landed with a thud. Pain shot through his body, but he was alive. Somehow. He fumbled for his flashlight, clicked it on. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing a vast cavern. And he wasn't alone. Shapes moved in the shadows, just out of sight.
Alex's light flickered across the cavern walls. They were covered in drawings, primitive, ancient. They told a story of a forest that hungered, of spirits trapped, of a cycle as old as time itself. Alex's breath caught in his throat. He was part of that story now.
He heard movement behind him, turned. His light fell on a figure, translucent, shimmering, a spirit. Its eyes met Alex's, and in that moment, he understood. This was no accident. He hadn't stumbled into this place. He had been lured, trapped, just like all the others.
Welcome, Alex. We've been waiting for you.
Others emerged from the shadows, dozens, hundreds, each a shimmering echo of a person, lost, trapped, forgotten by the world above. They crowded around him, their ethereal forms passing through each other, through him. Another reached out, its hand passing through Alex's arm. S4, help us, S1, shivering. Please.
Free us. Take our place.
Alex backed away. His back hit the cavern wall. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The spirits pressed closer, their voices rising, a chorus of desperation, of hunger, of need.
Choose one. Take their place. Let them go free.
His mother's spirit pushed to the front. Her face was just as he remembered. But her eyes were wrong, cold, calculating.
Alex, my darling. Don't you want to be with your mother again? Forever?
Alex's mind raced. He had to think, had to find a way out. But the spirits were relentless. Their pleas, their demands, their offers. It was overwhelming. He couldn't think straight, couldn't focus, couldn't breathe.
I can help you.
The other spirits fell silent, wary, afraid. This one was dangerous. Alex could feel it, but he was desperate, out of options. His voice cracked, dry, parched. How long had he been down here? S1, how?
A trade. Your body for my freedom.
Alex hesitated. It was insane, impossible. But what choice did he have? Because there was always a catch. S1, what's the catch?
Smart boy. The catch is this. Once the trade is made, it can never be undone. You'll be trapped here. Forever. But you'll be alive. Sort of. It's more than the others have.
Alex closed his eyes, thought of home, of the life he'd left behind, of all the adventures he'd planned. But that was gone now, lost just like him. He opened his eyes, met the spirit's gaze. It reached out, grabbed Alex's hand. The touch was electric, painful. The spirit began to laugh, a sound of triumph, of freedom long denied. And then it was gone, leaving Alex alone in the dark. Time passed. Or maybe it didn't. In the cavern, such things lost meaning. Alex learned the stories of the other spirits, of how they came to be here. He became one of them. A whisper in the dark. Sometimes new souls would fall, lured by the woods, by the whispers. Alex would watch, silent, as the cycle repeated, as the cavern claimed more lost souls. Up above, the whispering woods continued its vigil, waiting, patient, eternal, and deep in the heart of the woods, in a cavern hidden from the world, Alex waited. His voice joined the chorus of whispers. The whispering woods had claimed another soul.